Good afternoon, graduates, friends and honoured guests. My name is Donald McEwen and I'm the chaplain to the University, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to this graduation ceremony at the University of St Andrews on this exciting day for you. Presiding at today's graduation ceremony is the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dame Sally Mapstone. This ceremony is taking place in the Younger Hall, officially opened in 1929. The Younger Hall is the University's venue for graduations and most formal ceremonies. In a few moments, the academic procession will enter the hall to welcome it. St Salvator's Chapel Choir will lead us in singing the Gaudeamus. Please do join in. The words can be found in your programme. Now, should the fire alarm sound, please remain seated. The alarm will be silenced and staff will immediately investigate the cause of the activation. Should an evacuation be necessary, the alarm will then sound continuously and you will be advised of the need to evacuate. Staff will direct you accordingly. Please follow staff direction and leave the hall by the most appropriate exit. At the end of the graduation ceremony, all our new graduates will join the academic procession, leaving the Younger Hall and walking along North Street, crossing the PH and entering St Salvator's Quadrangle through the archway. To supporters, please wait until all our new graduates have left the hall. Ushers will then show you to the nearest exits. Outside, you will be directed to the quad, where you will be able to join our new graduates. Please ensure that your mobile phone is switched off, or at least is on silent. You are welcome to take pictures and video footage, but please stay seated to do so. And now, to capture this unique moment, our official photographer will take a picture of those graduating today before the ceremony begins.
Good afternoon. Are we ready for this, are we? Like my camera? I can see everybody in this hall, so there's no hiding place. Are we ready? Excellent. Come on, where's the smiles? Perfect. One more. Very good. Thank you. Congratulations and enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoy the graduation ceremony. As you are able, please rise for the Gaudeamus. Oremus. Omnipotens et aeterni Deus, actiones nostras omnes aspirando praeveni, et adjuvando prosequere, ut cuncta nostra operatio, et praesertim hoc quod nunc agredimur opus, a te incipiat, et per te queptum finiatur, quatenus sanctum nomen tuum glorificemus, et misericordia tua vitam aeternam consequamur, per Iesum Christum Dominum nostrum. Amen.
Please be seated. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my happy duty as Principal and Vice-Chancellor to welcome you to this summer graduation ceremony at the University of St. Andrews. Graduation is the highlight of our academic year. At these ceremonies, students are awarded their degrees and people of distinction are honoured. We orient our academic calendar around these celebrations, and they are a tradition that speaks to the heart of our institutional mission. I am delighted that all of you can share in the joy of today's ceremony. Many of you who are graduating will have started your degree in 2021. You are the last of our COVID-era cohort. During your time here, you have needed to embody a greater degree of adaptability than any exercised by your recent forebears. But you have faced these challenges with aplomb, demonstrating fortitude as you endured restrictions and finding new ways to embrace long-held traditions. Though that legacy remains with you, the ritual and positivity of this graduation ceremony will help to take you further through it and into the next crucial stage of your life script. Today we gather in the Younger Hall, a fitting setting for the celebration of our graduates' achievements. This well-loved venue has been the home of our graduation ceremonies since its initial opening in 1929. The Younger Hall has been extensively renovated in recent years. The refurbishment has revitalised this space for the next century of its existence, whilst ensuring that the entire building is fully accessible for all its users. The building's layout and decorations have been refreshed, but are intrinsically unchanged, and the shape of the ceremonies remains the same. Today's graduands will cross the Younger Hall stage in a style that unites them with the students who, for almost a century, crossed it before them. And also, of course, with the students who crossed our stages in the 5 centuries before that. The broader graduation tradition which we observe today has indeed taken place at St. Andrews since the 2nd decade of the 15th century, when the university was founded. And some of the rituals that were established in the 1400s remain an integral part of the ceremony. These rituals honour our history and signify the assumption of each graduand's place within an institution that has done as much as any other to shape our modern world. We are Scotland's first and foremost university, the 3rd oldest in the English-speaking world, and one of the 25 oldest still operating. Across 612 years, students and academics have gathered here to build and disseminate knowledge, and their ambition has proven resilient to the challenges mounted against them. The religious and political regimes that have reared and crumbled, the pandemics and wars that have beaten at the doors. Ours is not, however, a story of survival, but of leadership. St. Andrews has been at the vanguard of political, cultural, and intellectual developments since our inception, and our people have steered the hands of monarchs and parliaments since our earliest days. And we are now very much focused on securing the future of our institution for the next 600 years. This is the aim of the university's Making Waves campaign, launched at the beginning of this academic year, and about which you can find out more in your copy of today's programme. Universities are, by their nature, institutions of forward progress, and we perennially look to the future so that our research and our graduates serve the world with maximum effect. But so too do we cherish our history, which chronicles how similar our activities are, in many respects, to the time of our foundation, and which also reveals the ways in which our teaching and activities have adapted to ensure that our university is not subservient to history, but instead creates it. Students of 15th century St. Andrews learnt primarily through lengthy orations delivered by their masters and instructors, often in the teacher's private residence, as part of a curriculum focused on logic, metaphysics, and ethics, all inspired by Aristotle. Speaking in the vernacular was forbidden, and teaching and conversation alike were conducted in Latin, which remained our official institutional language until 1747. Examinations took the form of a verbal interrogation by one's professors, and discourse could become so heated that students were known, on occasion, to descend into violence. Football and, astonishingly, golf were both banned in 15th century St. Andrews as they were deemed too distracting. But archery, an important skill for the defence of the realm, was promoted. This may have occasioned second thoughts in 1470, when, after an unresolved argument, the dean and members of the faculty were set upon by students with bows and arrows. Accounts show that in the 1540s, over a century after our foundation, student life in St. Andrews did evidence something more of the asceticism of a university founded within a religious capital. Students were awoken at 5 a.m., attended Mass at 6, started class at 7 with a lesson selected by the principal, and continued to learn until well into the evenings. Football was still banned, as now were, it will surprise no one, weapons, and the college strictly prohibited beards and certain groovy fashions. Women were also strictly forbidden, lest they, like football, should prove too distracting, with the exception of a single laundress, and that on the condition that she was over 50 years old. The severity of student life lessened in the 2 centuries that followed, and an increasingly modernized curriculum was enjoyed by some of the foremost luminaries of the time. Adam Ferguson, a renowned Enlightenment philosopher, graduated in 1742. James Wilson, a founding father of the United States, studied here from 1757 to 1761. And 2 eminent 18th century figures were awarded the degree of MD, or Doctor of Medicine, by the university. The French revolutionary Jean-Paul Marat in 1775, and in 1792, Edward Jenner, whose advancements in the prevention of smallpox pioneered modern immunology. Nonetheless, despite these highlights, the 18th century was not a period of growth in the university's history, with St. Andrews being described by one contemporary alumnus as a healthy, retired spot. Consequently, as the 1800s approached, pressure for organisational and curricular reform was mounting. Governmental reform by way of the Universities Scotland Act of 1858 introduced the organisational structures which remain mostly intact to this day. Women were admitted to full-time study in 1892, although St. Andrews had enabled them to study remotely, but not to graduate, for 20 years prior through its establishment of the Lady Literate in Arts programme in 1872. By the 1900s, student life resembled many of our current graduates' experiences. One of the most memorable examples of this was the university's quincentenary celebrations of September 1911. Planning for the anniversary took 3 years and required the erection of a temporary venue to accommodate 3,500 guests. Garden parties spread across the town, representatives of 145 universities and learned societies visited, 100 honorary degrees were bestowed, and the town came to life with song and celebration. The Younger Hall was a happy outcome of these celebrations. It was built with a lead donation by Dr. James and Mrs. Annie Younger, members of the local St. Andrews community, who provided £100,000 for the purchase of the site and the building's construction, around £9 million in current terms. And it was opened by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, in June 1929. Its construction was, however, also supported by funds raised on an early subscription model in honour of the 1911 celebrations, and by which means contemporary alumni laid the foundation of the building that would be enjoyed by so many of their successors. It is their foresight to which the splendour of our current and recently enhanced surroundings is owed, and which our graduates will honour by leaving this hall and using their education to change the world for the better, as so many have done before them. Returning now to today's ceremony and the rituals which connect us to our forebears. The first of these you have already witnessed when St. Salvator's Chapel Choir initiated proceedings with a rendition of the Gaudeamus, and the University Chaplain, the Reverend Dr. Donald McEwen, delivered the opening prayer. As Vice-Chancellor, I preside over these ceremonies and am invested with the authority to award degrees, the presentation of which will immediately follow this introduction. This ceremony will also see the graduation of this year's McEwen Scholar. In 2024, the University of St. Andrews and the McEwen Scholarship Foundation celebrated the 50th anniversary of this unique scholarship, which is awarded to qualified Canadian students to pursue an undergraduate degree in St. Andrews. In recognition of the transformational opportunities offered by the McEwen Scholarship over the past 5 decades, I'm delighted to welcome John Aylan, President of the McEwen Scholarship Foundation, to today's ceremony. The conferral of awards at bachelor's, master's, and doctoral level will constitute the core of this ceremony. I will confer degrees both on those many students who are present and on the smaller number of those who are unable to attend and who have thus graduated in absentia. As that phrase indicates, these rituals are conducted partly in Latin, following St. Andrew's tradition. For all graduands listed in the ceremony, present or absent, I will call upon the deans of the respective faculties and ask them to present each graduand for their award in turn. And I will then confer the degree with Latin phrases, one of which, for example, translates as, "I raise you to the rank of Master of Arts, and to symbolize this, I place upon you this cap." To most, though, I will simply say, "Et super te," meaning, "and upon you too." The precise moment of graduation occurs when the graduate's cap, or birrettum, which I will be utilizing, touches the head of the graduand. This academic cap has been used in every ceremony since December 1696, when it was acquired from a St. Andrew's tailor, and just to reassure you, it is very regularly dry cleaned. And it symbolizes the ascension of our graduands into graduates and their assumption of an equal place within our alumni community. When the conferrals are complete, St. Salvator's Chapel Choir will return to deliver a musical interlude, and we are thankful both to the choir and their director, Claire Innes-Hopkins, for the felicity they bring to this occasion. We will then proceed directly to one of the highlights of these ceremonies, the presentation of honorary awards, with the conferral of an honorary doctorate upon today's guest of honor, Frank Gardner, OBE. I will then deliver the graduation address to close our ceremony, a traditional message of congratulation and inspiration to our new graduates. The ceremony will then conclude with the benediction and the graduation procession. At St. Andrews, the academics and professional staff who have supported you, our graduands, are immensely proud of your accomplishments. But this ritual does not mark the end of your association with St. Andrews. You are joining a vital community of alumni who have positively shaped the world around them for 612 years and who support one another in the present. So while you are graduating, you are not leaving our community, but taking the next step in your St. Andrews experience. And it is our sincere hope that you will continue to engage as a St. Andrean throughout your life. Decanus Facultatis Artium.
Vice-Chancellor, I have the honour to present for the degree of Master of Arts with Honours, Joseph Gray.
Te ad gradum magistri artium promovio, cuius re in symbolum super te hoc beretum impono.
Fraser Lang.
Et super te.
Zitong Lu.
Et super te.
Finn Marshall.
Et super te.
Josh Morrison.
Et super te.
Niamh McManus.
Et super te.
Nico Christou.
Et super te.
Natalie Olofsson.
Et super te.
Jack Parbrook.
Et super te.
Dina Sapra.
Et super te.
Aran Suarez.
Et super te.
Anna Schunica.
Et super te.
Mariella Breitbrecher.
Et super te.
Taylor Ann Boonzaya.
Et super te.
Harry Hamilton.
Et super te.
Janvi Podart.
Et super te.
Fanny Bernson.
Et super te.
Thomas Bolan.
Et super te.
Matisse Bourassa.
Et super te.
Matthew Kando.
Et super te.
Pablo Carreras Avila.
Et super te.
Eleanor Chesser.
Et super te.
Augustus Delves Broughton.
Et super te.
Emily Dunstan.
Et super te.
Mendel Juan.
Et super te.
Amar Jaswal.
Et Superte.
Jun Sok Kim.
Et Superte.
Tess Lim Jurich.
Et Superte.
Serena Mackey.
Et Superte.
Nikita Olenik.
Et Superte.
Brando Giovanni Palmarini.
Et Superte.
Amir Ali Rahmani Khalili.
Et Superte.
Rafaela Robeson.
Et Superte.
Kira Stout.
Et Superte.
Maya Vollen.
Et Superte.
Ben Youd.
Et Superte.
Alexander Baring.
Et Superte.
Julia Bierkamper.
Et Superte.
Alistair Bock.
Et Superte.
Ben de Mello.
Et Superte.
Olivia Dillon.
Et Superte.
Archie Donald.
Et Superte.
Laura Gillis.
Et Superte.
Jesper Jarlefelt.
Et Superte.
Kushi Kaur.
Et Superte.
Miranda Nicola Capullo.
Et Superte.
Theodore Robinson.
Et Superte.
Duncan Roser.
Et Superte.
Dare Rolfe.
Et Superte.
Caleb Sook.
Et Superte.
Gabriel Vargas Berroa.
Et Superte.
Sami Wang.
Et Superte.
Chanel Advani.
Et Superte.
Thomas Petty.
Et Superte.
Laurie Dewar.
Et Superte.
Torrin Evans.
Et Superte.
Maximilian Mache.
Et Superte.
Will Martin.
Et Superte.
Andrik Poon.
Et Superte.
Casey Willard.
Et Superte.
Lily Douglas.
Et Superte.
Jacinta Welfi.
Et Superte.
Freya Faris.
Et Superte.
Kishev Vedya.
Et Superte.
Pinche Fong.
Et Superte.
Ling Chao Zhou.
Et Superte.
Finlay Matheson.
Et Superte.
Dylan Stavely.
Et Superte.
Hayley Bigler.
Et Superte.
Melanie Chung.
Et Superte.
Joseph Dowie.
Et Superte.
Laura Delariche.
Et Superte.
Grace Maxwell.
Et Superte.
Esme Rockledge.
Et Superte.
Ellie Trace.
Et Superte.
Catherine Arnold.
Et Superte.
Reed Blaine.
Et Superte.
Jeff Chung.
Et Superte.
Jet Green.
Et Superte.
Charles Gwynn.
Et Superte.
Nitin McKinley.
Et Superte.
Jacopo Pizzuto.
Et Superte.
Nazneen Rehman.
Et Superte.
Ellie Sung.
Et Superte.
Finn Watson.
Et Superte.
Saba Alaba Hussein.
Et Superte.
Alistair Davis.
Et Superte.
Kevin McClearley.
Et Superte.
Marvin Sachian Rizakul.
Et Superte.
Maria Spatar.
Et Superte.
Gabor Veres.
Et Superte.
Amber Alexander.
Et Superte.
Caroline Brecker.
Et Superte.
Bryn Bust Haverkamp.
Et Superte.
Cassidy Carson.
Et Superte.
Bailey Chamberlain.
Et Superte.
Bryce Courts Pierce.
Et Superte.
Annabella Cuenca Goddard.
Et Superte.
Jodie Douglas.
Et Superte.
Henry Eads Epstein.
Et Superte.
Christian Fusco.
Et Supete.
Lily Gordon.
Et Supete.
Thomas Gronskag.
Et Supete.
Honey Harrop.
Et Supete.
Gregor Howie.
Et Supete.
Shuran Diang.
Et Supete.
Lily Jones.
Et Supete.
Ingrid Kagye.
Et Supete.
Kevin Kane.
Et Supete.
June Lam.
Et Supete.
Andra Julia Lupu.
Et Supete.
Stephanie Lusser.
Et Supete.
Callum McLennan.
Et Supete.
Charles Modder.
Et Supete.
Antonia Naujoks.
Et Supete.
Lucia Polka.
Et Supete.
Lane Ostroff.
Et Supete.
Jaden Patel.
Et Supete.
Christy Paul.
Et Supete.
Ava Reinstein.
Et Supete.
Rory Shea.
Et Supete.
John Shivak.
Et Supete.
Caroline Simpson.
Et Supete.
Sophia Strum.
Et Supete.
Ethan Savarsky.
Et Supete.
Gustavo Velasco Melgar.
Et Supete.
Parvati Vishwanathan.
Et Supete.
William Wright.
Et Supete.
Ken George.
Et Supete.
Isabella Dam.
Et Supete.
Mong Chang Dung.
Et Supete.
Danny Gerber.
Et Supete.
Savannah Schaefer.
Et Supete.
Julian Shenoy.
Et Supete.
Helen Siepman.
Et Supete.
Veronica Tamash Katzer.
Et Supete.
Nelly Zumpalova.
Et Supete.
Anne Tartar.
Et Superte.
Freddie Wickham.
Et Superte.
Félix Bilodeau Boisvert.
Et Superte.
Indiana Connor.
Et Superte.
Sophie Ekman.
Et Superte.
Julius Engelen.
Et Superte.
Guy Fisher.
Et Superte.
Sebastian Hawke.
Et Superte.
Sadie Hassman.
Et Superte.
Julia Henshaw.
Et Superte.
Oliver Messler.
Et Superte.
Peter Morrison.
Et Superte.
Anya Politaiko.
Et Superte.
Belén Tanpajuelo.
Et Superte.
Ruby Wright.
Et Superte.
Vice-Chancellor, I ask you to confer the degree in absentia on Maya Bjork, Stephen Gu, Patrick Hayes, Jolie Lay, Hazem Mustafa, Ilya Tafazuli, Junchi Wong.
Eos absentes magistros artium renuncio.
Vice-Chancellor, I have the honour to present for the degree of Master of Letters, Bidith Raj Pandey.
Te ad gradum magistri literarum promovio, cuius rei in symbolum superte hoc beretum impono.
Bivas Raj Pandey.
Et Superte.
Vice-Chancellor, I ask you to confer the degree in absentia on Trevor Bina.
Eum absentum magistrum literarum renuncio.
Vice-Chancellor, I have the honour to present for the degree of Master of Science, Shi Jin Qin.
Te ad gradum magistri scientiae promovio, cuius rei in symbolum superte hoc beretum impono.
Vice-Chancellor, I have the honour to present for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy for a thesis entitled, What are the perceived roles of felt emotions, displayed emotions, and emotion regulation in the experiences of women leaders in UK higher education, with regard to their reported leadership behaviours and their perceived leadership effectiveness? Sarah Hathorn.
Te ad gradum doctoris philosophiae promovio, cuius rei in symbolum superte hoc beretum impono.
For a thesis entitled Impact of Supranational Non-Financial Disclosure Legislation on CSR Reporting, the case of the EU Directive 2014-95 EU, Anna Sterk.
Et Superte.
For a thesis entitled Emerging Players, an exploratory study of Chinese game companies' internationalization motives, Xiao Xiong Xiong.
Et Superte.
Vice-Chancellor, I ask you to confer the degree in absentia on Lazaros Zografopoulos.
Eum absentem doctorem philosophiae renuncio. Decanus Facultatis Scientiae.
Vice-Chancellor, I have the honor to present for the degree of Bachelor of Science with honors, Anna Bersinci.
Te ad gradum baccalarii scientiae promovio, cuius rei in simulum super te hoc beretum impono.
Lucy Bridle.
Et super te.
Ethan Distelbrink.
Et super te.
Lothar Chukwu Ase.
Et super te.
Harrison Gardner.
Et super te.
Harriet Groves.
Et super te.
Magnus Harkness.
Et super te.
David McRae.
Et super te.
Khalid Mahmood.
Et super te.
Harry Menon.
Et super te.
Andrew Nash.
Et super te.
Marie-Claire Nietzsche.
Et super te.
Gemma Osborne.
Et super te.
Cohen Philippa Gradias.
Et super te.
Tanya Sinclair.
Et super te.
Louis Swoboda.
Et super te.
Jan Wehard.
Et super te.
Alex Campbell.
Et super te.
Sarah Ashmead.
Et super te.
Emmanuel Diamond.
Et super te.
Harry Forber.
Et super te.
Sharanya Gupta.
Et super te.
Jamil Habas.
Et super te.
Ho-Wei Rex Lee.
Et super te.
Max Lewandowski.
Et super te.
Minsara Senanayeka.
Et super te.
Sophie Fiebrock.
Et super te.
Aya Vasan.
Et super te.
Vadim Wolfson.
Et super te.
Gabriela Yushenkov.
Et super te.
Brody Aitken.
Et super te.
Maher Al-Nufal Barini.
Et super te.
Fergus Cato.
Et Superte.
Owen Channon.
Et Superte.
Isabel Hope.
Et Superte.
Millie Pike.
Et Superte.
Angus Spence.
Et Superte.
Yi Chen Tu.
Et Superte.
Eric Wang.
Et Superte.
Tia Gogulas.
Et Superte.
Claire Han.
Et Superte.
Alia Overoy.
Et Superte.
Su Chen Zhang.
Et Superte.
Tommaso Bianchi.
Et Superte.
Sarah Vallet.
Et Superte.
Joshua Bashford.
Et Superte.
Chong Chen.
Et Superte.
Billy Cropper.
Et Superte.
Mathieu Gagné.
Et Superte.
Luca Gorgas.
Et Superte.
Janie McIntyre.
Et Superte.
Ashwati Nambia.
Et Superte.
Joe Taylor.
Et Superte.
Joseph Yor.
Et Superte.
Finley Watson.
Et Superte.
Sishan Abbas.
Et Superte.
Anand Bhargava.
Et Superte.
Noor Azriana Binti Noor Azarai.
Et Superte.
John Bryan.
Et Superte.
Ruchi Dadu.
Et Superte.
Hamad Jamal.
Et Superte.
Sophie McGowan.
Et Superte.
Patricio Ramos Cervero.
Et Superte.
Catherine Soda.
Et Superte.
Husnal Tukral.
Et Superte.
Cameron Wilson.
Et Superte.
Mukhalita Chakravarti.
Et Superte.
Tasha Del Vecchio.
Et Superte.
Belen Garcia Elias Rodriguez.
Et Superte.
Cristina Medrano Ribardo.
Et Superte.
Akshat Srivastava.
Et Superte.
Julia Westra.
Et Superte.
Ronak Arora.
Et Superte.
Tyler Barlow.
Et Superte.
Eleonore Bernard.
Et Superte.
Matthew Boyle.
Et Superte.
Michael Castorino.
Et Superte.
Anne Catherine Cheney.
Et Superte.
Kyle Cleel Harding.
Et Superte.
Alexia Cookson Garcia.
Et Superte.
Charles DiPaolo.
Et Superte.
Mania Dutt.
Et Superte.
Omar Ayman Hassan Reynan.
Et Superte.
Benjamin Hort.
Et Superte.
Kaylee Keegan.
Et Superte.
Ibrahim Kavaja.
Et Superte.
Esther Mühl.
Et Superte.
Holland Sellers.
Et Superte.
Ria Singh.
Et Superte.
Shante Vanniekerk.
Et Superte.
Xian Teng Wang.
Et Superte.
Clementine Wilson.
Et Superte.
Michelle Becerra de San Cristobal.
Et Superte.
Ella Butler.
Et Superte.
Alejandra de la Fuente Fernandez.
Et Superte.
Iona Dunn.
Et Superte.
Antonella Kissling.
Et Superte.
Paul Kumbulis.
Et Superte.
Laura Lasich.
Et Superte.
Robert McGlashan.
Et Superte.
Rebecca Parry.
Et Superte.
Kiki Shahida.
Et Superte.
Piotr Tokarski.
Et Superte.
Lucy Warner.
Et Superte.
Vice-Chancellor, I ask you to confer the degree in absentia on Sir Kun Wan, Severin Nielsen, Chia He Wan.
Eos absentes Baccalaureus Scientiae Renuncio. I call upon the Assistant Vice Principal, Dean of Learning and Teaching and Provost of St Leonard's College, Professor Frank Lorenz Müller.
Vice-Chancellor, it is my privilege to present for the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, Frank Gardner, OBE. In the autumn of 2020, halfway through the UK's second national COVID lockdown, I watched the BBC Two documentary, Being Frank. Initially, the programme had caught my attention because of its obviously excellent title. But soon I became totally absorbed by the topic it addressed with such sensitivity and fortitude. The experience of suffering and surviving sudden, life-changing disability. And by its creator and protagonist, today's honorand, Frank Gardner. The story of Frank's life is one of astounding energy, prodigious talent, admirable courage, and enviable achievement. And it is the mark of the man that what happened to him in the Al Suwaidi district of Riyadh on the 6th of June 2004 merely serves to accentuate this record, rather than end or deflect it. On that day, Frank, who was then 43 years old and reporting from the BBC from Saudi Arabia, was ambushed by Al-Qaeda gunmen who shot him 6 times. The bullets ripped through Frank's shoulder, leg, and torso, damaging his spinal nerves. His cameraman, Simon Cumbers, was killed. Frank recovered from his catastrophic injuries after 14 surgical operations and months of rehabilitation, with his legs paralyzed. Astonishingly, Frank's achievement in the course of the more than 2 decades since this dreadful day have exceeded even the amazing record before. By 2004, this Exeter University graduate had already become fluent in Arabic, had risen to the rank of captain in the Territorial Army, worked as the Middle East manager of Fleming's Bank, and then joined the BBC to become the corporation's Middle East correspondent. Since recovering from his injuries, Frank has continued to serve as one of the most authoritative voices analyzing and explaining the politics of the Middle East, addressing a global audience and doing so frequently from the field. As the BBC security correspondent, he brings his particular expertise of the war on terror and its legacies to his journalism, and also to his work as a prolific documentary maker on topics such as Somali piracy, Saudi Arabia, or Putin's nuclear threat. As a side hustle, Frank is a highly successful author, both of non-fiction works, like his celebrated Blood and Sand of 2006, and of his best-selling novels, Crisis, Ultimatum, Outbreak, and Invasion. As you can see, there must be a lot of spare time in Frank's life, and he fills it with hobbies such as scuba diving or sit-skiing. He learned to master the latter sport after his recovery, and this led to his election as the honorary president of the Ski Club of Great Britain, and to his appointment as a patron of Disability Snow Sport UK. Engaging with sports is only one way in which Frank keeps raising the perennial challenge of removing the myriad obstacles littering the path of disabled individuals. Drawing on his own experience as a frequent disabled traveller, Frank has prominently campaigned to remove the frustrations and indignities he has had to face at airports and aboard aircraft. Talking of flight, did I mention that Frank is a passionate and expert birdwatcher who is currently serving as the president of the British Trust for Ornithology? Of course, he is not just some armchair twitcher admiring our feathered friends from the comfort of some local hide. His quest, for example, to fulfill a lifetime's ambition to see the elusive bird of paradise took him and his wheelchair to the jungle of Papua New Guinea. Hardly surprising, then, that Frank also won a BBC Celebrity Mastermind competition in 2010. His specialist subject? Birds of the Middle East, of course. We are not the first to recognize the range and depth of Frank's achievements. In 2005, he was made an OBE for services to journalism, and 6 years later, the European Diversity Awards named him Journalist of the Year. He also received Spain's El Mundo Prize for International Journalism and is a recipient of the United Arab Emirates Zayed Medal for Journalism. In 2018, the Chartered Institute of Linguists presented Frank with their David Crystal Award for his outstanding contribution to the field of languages. And in 2022, he was named the Press Gazette's Person of the Year. It is a pleasure and an honor that the University of St. Andrews can add to these markers of respect and celebrate the achievements of today's honorant. And so, Vice-Chancellor, in recognition of his major contribution to journalism, to helping audiences across the globe gain a better understanding of the Middle East, and to championing the cause of individuals who, every day, overcome disability when achieving astonishing feats, I invite you to confer the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, on Frank Gardner, OBE.
Te ad gradum doctoris legum honoris causa promovio, cuius rei in symbolum superte hoc veretum in hoc.
Standing behind just in case I go over the top here. So, gosh, are there any Americans left back in the United States? They're all here. And who could blame you? What an amazing university. So look, 30 years ago, I just started at the BBC, and it was a kind of salutary lesson, this. We were sitting, my girlfriend at the time, she and I were watching a documentary on TV, in Covent Garden in London. And some distance away at the window in the street, there's always a bit of a hubbub in Covent Garden, but we heard this very distinctive kind of whoomph noise. And she looked at me, she said, "Doesn't that sound a bit like an explosion?" I said, "Yeah, but you know, probably not, and I really want to watch the rest of this documentary." She said, "All right, but you know, you're supposed to be the news hound at BBC," and you know, so I watched the rest of the documentary, and then I thought, well, just out of curiosity, I'm going to go down and see what's going on. And by then there were sirens. I thought, oh, this doesn't sound good. And it took me to Charing Cross Police Station, where the IRA or provisional IRA or real IRA had blown the top off the bus. And I was almost pretty much the first journalist down there. And it was 1995, and I had one of the first generation mobile phones. They'd just come in. And, you know, for those of you up in the upper tiers here, well, we've spanned both, you know, life before the internet, life before mobile phones. For you lot, this is just inconceivable. How are you going to live without your phone? But we had to in those days. And it was very strange. You know, I had this phone, and suddenly a producer appeared, who I didn't know that well, but I had seen her at BBC, and she said, "Give me the phone. They want me to do this interview." I said, but it's my phone. No, hand it over. And I did. And she did the live interviews until she then got what's called big-footed. Somebody sort of bigger and more important turned up, a kind of better-known name, and did all the interviews on the phone until the camera crews arrived and so on. And I got my phone back. And I thought, how did that just happen? You know, and I decided there and then, my very first month at the BBC, I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm always going to try and seize the opportunity. And, you know, I think the kind of moral of the story is obvious, and you're probably thinking, what can I possibly learn from this old guy who's done media up here in a wheelchair and the thing, you know, because I'm doing business management or economics or whatever. And you'd be absolutely right. But I suppose my advice to you is two things. First of all, choose a speciality and try to become a subject matter expert in what you're doing. I mean, you've already chosen this class has already chosen incredibly employable degree subjects. So well done. I chose Arabic. Nobody wanted to employ an Arabist, I promise you, in 1984. You know, the big lie was, the world's your oyster. It really wasn't. But try to stay ahead of the game on things like AI and quantum, because it's coming up to bite us. And, you know, the risks of it doing so many of us, even you, out of jobs are huge. So, you know, don't let it catch you unawares. Keep looking in the rearview mirror and read up about it. Take all the opportunities you can, such as, you know, when somebody said, "Can you fill in this weekend?" You know what? I've got a really good friend's party. Do the weekend, you know, if it's early on in your career, because that's what people will thank you for. Do the bank holidays. Do the overnight shifts if necessary. These things will lurch you forward. And there will come a time, he says, the old sage here, there will come a time, almost certainly, in your career where there's an opportunity for a big leap forward. And try to see when that might be coming. I mean, for me, I did 2 years in the newsroom, and then I realized there was a real opportunity to go and become a freelance for the BBC, but a freelance reporter from the Gulf. And they were a bit kind of unimaginative about it, my bosses at the time. They said, well, we don't think there's any news there. And I said, that's because you've got nobody reporting it. I'm going to go there and bring you the news from there. I will bring it to life for you. And I've never regretted that decision, and it catapulted me forward. And there have been other stages as well. Because look at it this way. You didn't choose a mediocre university. You chose one of the best universities in the world. So don't choose a mediocre career path. Make the best of it. Thank you very much.
As Vice-Chancellor, I will now deliver today's graduation address. First of all, let me once more offer all our new graduates my warmest congratulations. We just are thrilled for you, and I'm not going to talk for that long so we can get into the procession. You can then go and celebrate. But let me say a few things. Achieving a degree, particularly from a university that asks much of its students and gives much in return, requires discipline, resilience, and no small measure of courage. You will each have travelled your own path to this moment, and along the way you will have made sacrifices, navigated setbacks, and uncovered reserves of determination you may not have known you possessed. So today honours all of that. It is a day of celebration, of ritual, of formal robes and informal photographs, of milestones marked in a single symbolic crossing across this stage. That, yes, but also out into a world that will ask of you in all sorts of ways who you are and what you stand for. In the course of your studies, I hope these are questions that you have given great thought to, and ones deepened by the challenge and rigour your tutors, lecturers, and your peers have set before you. A St Andrews education does not rest on the accumulation of information, but on something altogether more searching, the capacity to think and to rethink. In a tutorial where your view was upended, in an essay you argued yourself out of as much as into, in the quieter challenge of remaining curious when it would have been easier to retreat into certainty. True freedom, the kind universities strive to protect and nurture, is not just the freedom to speak, but the freedom to be changed by evidence, by argument, and by encounter. It takes courage to venture beyond consensus, to sit with uncertainty, to temper conviction with tolerance. But that too is learning, and it is the bedrock of freedom of speech. Not a license to say anything at all, but the kind of intellectual generosity that holds a society together when ideas collide. We often hear universities invoke the principles and practices of freedom of speech as a fundamental presence in university life. Yet in recent months, we have seen institutions around the world, even the most storied and powerful, wrestle publicly and painfully with what those freedoms really mean and how resilient they are when consensus frays or controversy erupts. In some institutions, open discussion in classrooms has been stymied and bold intellectual excursions discouraged, not always by decree, but through a culture of caution. These tensions do not end at the university door. You are graduating into a world that is in many ways uneasy with ambiguity, where pressure to signal allegiance, to be quick, clear, categorical, can overwhelm the slower, more generous work of reflection. It is in this space that words hold their greatest significance. Words can illuminate or obscure, include or exclude, liberate or confine, console or divide. They can bind us together and they can drive us apart. The power and the peril of language is hardly a new concern. In 1962, the scientist and novelist do note that combination because it was and it is a distinctive and telling one. C.P. Snow, upon assuming the rectorship of this university, devoted his address not to a theory or a discipline or even an argument, but to a quality of character that might guide us through such complexity. His subject was magnanimity. It is a word we hear quite rarely now, and Snow was already alert to its waning in the public sphere. But he meant something precise by it. A magnanimous person, he wrote, and his language, of course, is the gendered language of its time, but his point is entirely relevant. A magnanimous person sees himself and the other person as they really are. Then he tries to get the best out of the other person. In doing so, he tries to get the best out of himself. And this, I think, is a fine distillation of the best kind of university education. You have spent years amongst others of high ability and strong opinion, and have been challenged to recognize both the gifts of others and your own potential. If university life has done its work, it has taught you not just how to excel, but how to recognize excellence in others. It has made you capable, but also generous, able to lead, but equally able to stand aside when appropriate for the better idea, the sharper mind, the truer insight. To live magnanimously is not to think less of oneself, but to think more of the good that may be drawn from others. And yet when he wrote, Snow was troubled, he noted how the tone of public discourse was growing shriller, narrower, more inclined towards suspicion than admiration. He lamented the erosion of language itself, how words like moral were being hollowed out to mean merely censorious, how the fashionable use of the prefix anti seemed to signal a retreat from building towards more dismantling. We are, he said, in danger of forgetting what it is like to be generous to each other. Well, it's hard to argue that this danger has passed, but it is equally true that institutions like this one continue to believe that generosity of thought, of speech, of spirit is worth cultivating. Freedom of speech endures only if there remain institutions and individuals committed to its pursuit. That is the charge laid on universities. And today, as you graduate from one of the oldest and most questioning of them, it becomes, in some sense, yours as well. Listening, truly listening, is itself a kind of generosity. It asks us to pause, to weigh, and to resist the impulse to reply before we have understood. It offers not the freedom to dominate a conversation, but the freedom to enlarge it. And this is what will allow you to grow into deeper versions of yourselves. You will decide whether to speak in slogans or in sentences, whether to listen in order to understand or merely to reply. You have learned that ideas can be both powerful and provisional, that truth is rarely singular, and that even the firmest conviction may, in time, be transformed. These are not just questions of intellect, they are acts of care. They are, as C.P. Snow also said in his great 1951 novel, The Masters, they are what matters. When you exercise magnanimity, you will be honoring something more than your own right to speak. You will be upholding the conditions that make speech meaningful at all. That is how ideas move across difference, through difficulty, towards truth. It is the work of words, not just in their articulation, but in their thoughtful consideration, that advances knowledge and understanding. So as you leave this place and step into the wider world, carry that work with you to the better and magnanimous use of words, in thought, in speech, and in the company of others. Congratulations, everybody, once again. If you are able, please stand for the benediction.
Oremus. Gratia Domini nostri Iesu Christi, et caritas Dei, et communicatio Spiritus Sancti, sit cum omnibus nobis, in saecula saeculorum. Amen.